This is automating and testing Drupal with Zombie.js. I am going to give you just somewhat of a disclaimer that there is some shameless zombie references trickled throughout this presentation. So I do keep it PG, so nothing too graphic. But I definitely have a lot of fun with it. My name is Travis Tidwell. I'm also Travis T on Drupal.org. I have MediaFront module is probably my biggest module if you guys are familiar with that. You can find me on GitHub. I'm Travis T on GitHub as well. You can go to my website, travistidwell.com. I am Software Gnome on Twitter, but don't expect much from me. I don't tweet that much. And I am the lead developer for allplayers.com. If you guys don't know what that is, go check it out. It's awesome. Also, want to let you guys know that this whole presentation is online. You can actually follow along with me by going to travistidwell.com and then Drupal-zombie. You'll load it up and it'll look just like this. And then also all the code examples as well as the presentation itself can be found on GitHub at Travis T Drupal Zombie. So how does it all begin? It begins with the bite, right? So my objective here is going to be to hook you, to give some good reasons on why you would want to use Zombie.js, and I guess essentially bite you, give you the bug. So first of all, I'm going to answer the question, what is Zombie.js? So first of all, it is on the website. If you actually go to Zombie.js.org, I think maybe is what it is, it says it's an insanely fast headless browser, which is why it got its name, because zombies are also insanely fast, and I guess some of them would be headless. So that's how it got its name, Zombie.js. Another thing is it's completely written in JavaScript, which 10 years ago this would have been a horrible thing. But these days this is awesome. JavaScript is really hot. It's becoming very fast. It's very efficient. And we're all web developers, so we love JavaScript. One of the biggest reasons why I think is important about Zombie.js is it is completely written in Node.js. What makes this exciting is because you can actually bring in other Node.js libraries to kind of help you out with your automation. Whenever you're doing anything automation-wise, it's not as simple as Selenium testing where you're just clicking on things and filling stuff out. When you want to do automation, you want to bring in data, parse that data, collect that data in certain ways. You want to make decisions as you're automating. In Node.js, because you have access to all the libraries of Node.js, this makes this system very attractive. I also want to mention that some of you have heard of a thing called Phantom.js, which is very similar to Zombie. I love Phantom.js. In fact, I think if you have a decision to make between Phantom or Zombie, if you're doing testing, you probably should use Phantom. However, and what I'm about to demonstrate is Zombie is very, very attractive because we can bring in those Node.js packages and take advantage of them. I also want to mention that this is a Drupal camp, so I have to make this automating Drupal. But you can automate any website with this. It doesn't have to be Drupal. You can, anything that you do online, you can do using this technology. So it doesn't have to be Drupal. So why should you care about Zombie.js? So first of all, you can automate anything within the Drupal UI. So another method of automation is to maybe use like some back-end technology such as Drush. Like you can write some Drush commands to do some automation stuff, but the problem with that is it's all on the back end. So you have to know all the back end APIs like node load, node save. How do I manipulate a node to do what I want it to do? Basically, this is a front end automation tool, which means if you can do it in the UI, you can automate it with this tool. Also, you can automate Drupal sites you do not own, which is another big important thing about this. So let's say you want to automate something on Drupal.org. In fact, that was one of the biggest cases on why I decided to investigate this, is because I'm a module maintainer and I suck at it. So my issue queue is like through the roof, and I was like, I really don't want to go through all my issues, and whenever I want to close or do something with one of my issues, I'm making the same decisions on every single one. What's really painful is I have to go to every single one, click, click, click. It just takes a lot of time. Whereas it's awesome, I don't own Drupal.org, I just write an automation tool that goes through all of that for me, and because I'm using Node, I can bring in some prompt tools. I'll demonstrate all of this, it's awesome, so that I can actually make decisions within the console on what to do. it's both an automation and a testing tool. I think it's actually probably more of an automation tool. In fact, that's kind of how I'm advertising this, because if you're just doing testing, there's better options out there for you. Phantom.js is great. Selenium is great. But if you really want to do some hardcore automation and make your life easier, I feel like this is the tool for you, because you can use and leverage other Node.js libraries. Also, it's headless, which means it is continuous integration friendly. So for those of you who don't really know what headless means it's a browser without the UI. It loads the DOM, it puts everything where it should be. The only difference is it doesn't have to load the UI of the browser for it to work. It is essentially a headless browser, which means you can bring it into Jenkins, Hudson, automation tools. It makes it much, much easier, because you don't have to have that UI element of your server. It could just be a server that runs this by itself. Also, I think I did mention this, it allows full CLI support, which I'll show this off on how you can actually build a tool that asks for information and you can provide that information as you're trying to automate. It's really, really cool. And of course, as I said, you can take advantage of any additional Node.js library. I'll bring in some during this presentation just to illustrate that point, but it's very powerful because of it. And everyone knows, and you have all heard the saying, a very good developer is a what developer? Fill in the blank.
Lazy.
Lazy developer, right. So let's face it, you guys are lazy. And everyone knows the lazy developers are bitten first, right? So let's just consider yourself bitten. It's really exciting. I hope you like it. So what comes after the bite? Infection. That's whenever the bug takes hold, you're getting infected. So this is the part where I'm going to infect you, right? Let's infect your system with this, which basically is, how do I install this? The installation is kind of easy. It should be very, very easy. In fact, that's what kind of frustrated me about Zombie, is you kind of have to jump through some hoops to make it work the way you want. But don't worry, I'm going to walk you through it. The first step is easy. Download Node. I've been to a lot of Node presentations, and for those of you who have never really had experience with Node, no one's really said, well, how do you get Node? It's really easy. Go to Node, and you press the shiny green button right there. It's really easy. Except there's a problem, and this is where the issues with Zombie.js come up, is Zombie doesn't really jive with the 0.1 version of, no, 0.10, which is 0.10. Does anybody know why they use that ridiculous versioning scheme? That 0.10 is actually a greater version than 0.8. To me, it just makes no sense. But anyway, it doesn't jive with 0.10 of Node. But have no fear. There is actually a great tool out there called the Node Version Manager. And for those of you who have not used this, it's fantastic. What you do is you go to GitHub, go to this URL, creationxnvm is the short term for it, and you just run this simple command on your Mac, and that installs the Node Version Manager. And what you actually do at that point is you can install any version of Node that you want by just saying nvm install 0.8. And that's it, and it'll install it, and it's great. And then to use it, I'll show you, you go to the project repo and say nvm u 0.8, and it just uses that version of Node for that directory. So it's not like a global wide changing your entire system thing. It's a very contextual, I want to use 0.8 for this project, and it's really smart about that. This is the part I really didn't like. Unfortunately, you do need a C++ compiler to get the Zombie.js to build, because it is a Node library, but it does have to compile some stuff. Because of that, you do need a C++ compiler. If you have Xcode on your machine, don't worry about it. You already have it. But for those of you who don't, there's a great place to go that just is a package installer to get the GCC compiler. So go ahead and install that. And then after you're done with that, you can finally move on to setting up your project. That is also very simple. You make a directory called Drupal Zombie, change directories, and then you're actually going to create a package.json file, which is like telling the Node package manager how to install it. That's also very simple. It's JSON. So you just say, I want my name to be Drupal Zombie. My dependencies is Zombie. Here's another thing. You notice it's less than 2. I did that because Zombie came out with a new version that is not production ready. There are some hiccups. So just say less than 2 and it'll install the latest version of 1x branch, and you'll have no problem at all getting all of these examples to run. But that's what I love about Node Version Manager, or not Node Package Manager, is something like that is very simple to configure. So now we also have to make sure that we use Node 0.8, which now that you have the Node Version Manager, it's easy. You just type nvmu 0.8, and then you type npm install, and this will install Zombie in that directory. So you can walk through all of those steps. I've done it. It'll walk through, and it's not a problem. So now that you're infected, what happens after you're infected? Anybody know zombie culture? So you get infected and you die. Well, you have fever, obviously, but then you die, and then you start what? You start walking, all right? So let's walk. Let's actually build some custom apps and just get an understanding of what Zombie is and how we use it. So the first thing we're going to do is create a file called the app.js file. Every Node.js application, you build a JS file, which will be your application. It does not have to be called app.js. You can call it whatever you want. So for this example, I'm just calling it app.js. And the very first line is going to look like this. It's going to say var browser equals requires Zombie. That's actually just using the common.js to bring in that library, and it assigns it to the browser variable. And then you're going to create a new browser by saying browser equals new browser. So far, this is not that complicated. And then let's just actually go do something with Drupal.org, because I want to illustrate that you don't have to own the site to do something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go search, go to browser visit, Drupal.org search. You have to provide a callback function. I'll get into that here in a little bit. Inside the callback function, you have to say browser fill, then you provide the selector, which would be the ID. This is another thing I love about Zombie. You notice the selector that uses jQuery Sizzle, the Sizzle selectors. So you can use Sizzle to make that happen, which is great. You can also use XPath, but for those of you who are very familiar with using Sizzle selectors, it works. And then I'm going to type Zombie, another callback function. Trust me, I'm going to resolve this. Inside that callback function, you're actually going to press the button, which is edit submit, which is the Sizzle selector for the submit button. Another callback function. And then after that, I'm just going to print out the title of the page. And so if you actually did this, this would actually work. This would go out to Drupal.org. It would search the page. It would print out the title of the first item that it sees. I think it's actually a project called Zombie Killer or something, but that's what it'll end up printing out for you. So now I want to talk about these callbacks, because I really feel like to understand building a Node.js application, we really have to have a good discussion about that, callback functions, and what that means. And really the discussion I want to have is a discussion on asynchronous versus serial program flow, process flow. You'll be in a lot of Node.js presentations, and you'll see a lot of code being thrown around, but this is a really good talk to have to really fully understand what's going on here. So let's start with the very simplest use case first, which is serial execution. This is actually when you first learn how to program, this is what you learn. It's going to be very, very simple. And basically, serial execution says waits for one operation to end before starting the next. So let's say you have two functions. One's called do something. Next one's called do something else. Serial would basically say I'm going to do something, and then after that I'm going to do something else. Very, very simple. It prints what you expect. Things start getting a little bit interesting whenever one serial operation depends on the other. So let's actually walk through that example. So in this case, we have get something, which just returns something. And then we have a function called say something, which expects an argument and prints that. So to use that, you would do something like this. You would assign a variable, get something, and you would send that to say something. So far, this is still easy, right? This is just serial execution. This gives us what we expect. Where we really start having an issue is, let's say get something depends on an asynchronous source. So now instead of just returning something immediately, get something doesn't do it immediately. It goes out to Drupal or Google, and let's say it's an HTTP request. That could take 2 seconds to execute. And so what it's actually doing is it's getting the page, and then it has this callback function of this is the function that gets called whenever that response is made. And this is when a lot of people who first start getting into Node.js, they start getting a little bit uncomfortable, because in their head they're saying, okay, so because say something depends on something from get something, do I return the response here? I mean, is that what I do? Or this gets really confusing. But the truth of the matter is, get something is actually returning nothing. And a lot of people, whenever they're first doing this asynchronous stuff, they don't really catch that. And so what happens is down here on something, this actually assigns something to null. It prints out null on the screen. And this is the part whenever people who are experiencing this for the very first time, it's like I just don't understand what is going on here. It's like my mind just exploded. Things do not behave the way you expect it to behave. I love that GIF. It's awesome. So let's talk about what we have to do to make this work. And this will kind of get into the details of understanding asynchronous process flow. So what we have to do to fix this is we have to pass in something called a callback function. You guys have probably heard that before, but I mean, I don't know if it's ever been fully explained, but a callback function is essentially you saying, hey, Mr. Function, do something. Here's a function to call when you're done. And so that's what it does. It gets the response, and it calls that function whenever it's done. So to use this, we actually execute get something, but we pass in this callback function that says, okay, hand us that value whenever you're actually done getting the response. And then we pass that on to say something within there, and then that prints out everything just fine, and everything's great. So let's take another look at this. Now we can understand why we have to do things asynchronously, because we're going to Drupal.org search. That has a callback function. This edit keys, another callback function. But this exposes another problem. So if any of you guys have seen this, what we have here is, let's say you want to visit a website, and then after that you want to click a link, and then there you want to do something, and you want to do something else. And there's like this callback just hell. I mean, really, it's like a zombie MATRYOSHKA nightmare. It's these functions within functions within functions, and before you know it, it's just you have unreadable code, and really it's an unusable project at that point. Anybody else who tries to write anything after that can't even maintain it. A lot of people call this callback hell, if you ever hear that term. So how do we solve this problem, callback hell? Well, to solve this, Zombie tries to solve this with something they call promises. Now, basically what a promise is, if you actually look at it, what it does is it takes a very asynchronous thing and it makes it look synchronous, but it's really still doing it asynchronously. It just looks synchronous. And the way it actually works, it's really a queue is what it is. So every time fill, like the first fill, what that actually happens, that actually doesn't execute fill. What that actually does is it adds that command to a queue, then it goes to the next one, and it doesn't actually execute it. It just adds that to a queue and says, okay, they want to do this next. And then it adds the select to a queue. It adds uncheck to a queue. The first time that it experiences a real callback function, it says, oh, wait. They actually want to wait until that's done. It actually processes the queue at that point. That's whenever the real commands get executed. And then it does the callbacks synchronously until they're all done, and then it does that last callback. This is okay. This is, in fact, when you're experiencing promises for the first time, they're actually nice. However, when you should and should not use promises varies, especially with Zombie. So there are some pitfalls to this. Another pitfall is it breaks down when promises have dependencies on other promises. So just to give you an example, let's say this fill your name. What if we actually wanted to fill that with the contents of an element on the page? So we would have to have another command to get the value, and then somehow pass that value to the next promise. However, what most people would do is they would replace this string here with the contents of that string, but at that point, that string has not been, it's nothing because it hasn't been executed yet. And so promises break down because of that reason. Let me give you guys another use case that I've run into. Let's iterate over a list of nodes on Drupal in views, and let's actually do something with them. So here is what we're going to do. So I'm going to require the underscore library, which is a very useful library to iterate. What I'm going to do is visit the form. Inside the form, I'm going to get a list of all the nodes, which you use browser query all, get a list of nodes, and over that I'm going to iterate over each one, and I'm going to get the link, and then I'm going to click on the link, and then when that page is actually loaded, I'm going to print the header of that page. Can anybody tell me what's wrong with this? It looks correct. In fact, the first time you'd see this, you would say, that should work. Anybody want to take a guess of what would happen when this executes? We'll actually do it. This is what actually happens. So this is actually going out to Drupal right now. And it's doing just that. And it's clicking on the link. And you can notice it's kind of taking a while. And out of nowhere, it just does this. Does anybody know why it would do that? Well, let's actually look at the code again. In the code, you'll notice I'm getting all the nodes, and I'm iterating over each node. I'm getting the link, and I'm clicking on it. I want you guys to visualize yourself doing the same thing. You're going click, 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 click down the browser page. What's going to end up happening is the last page is going to end up loading, but when it's done loading, it's going to fire all the rest of the events that page is executed. And so this is what happens when people try to do things with Zombie for the first time and trying to do something that's very synchronous, such as using a browser and trying to put it in like an asynchronous process flow, is things like that happen. I mean, you get something like this, and it's different every time, by the way. And you get these bizarre results. So how do we fix this? Well, to fix this, we need a library to control the asynchronous process flow. And this is where using Node.js starts to really come to light on the power of this, because we can utilize existing libraries in Node, leverage them to make our lives much easier. The library I'm going to talk about today is called ASYNC.SERIES. You can go to GitHub to find it. So what this does is it uses asynchronous control flow and instead of promises. So you really have the power to do what you want, and you really know about it. It's also isomorphic. Does everyone know what isomorphic means when you hear that?
Top-down view.
Say what? There you go. Now actually, whenever you hear the term isomorphic in JavaScript, so we're actually in this new era of JavaScript, where JavaScript can not only be ran on the browser, but it can also be ran on the server because of Node. It obviously can be ran in the browser. So an isomorphic library, in fact, I'm very interested in these libraries. Flatiron, if you guys ever want to look up some really good libraries that are isomorphic, the Flatiron framework has a lot of them. These are libraries that can not only be ran on the browser, they can also be ran in Node. So you can use them either way. So they're very, very powerful because they're isomorphic. So to install it, it's very, very simple. We're just going to use the package manager to do that. You just need to add it to your dependencies in the package file. And then after that, type npm install. So let's actually just go through some usages here. So to fix this, we're going to use something called the ASYNC.SERIES, which basically executes things in a series in what seems to be a very synchronous way. Excuse me. So we're going to say ASYNC.SERIES. We're going to pass the very first function callback is going to be our first process flow. When we're done with that, we actually call the done function, which then it goes on to the next thing in the series. And it executes inside that function. Then you say, I'm done with that. And then when everything's done, it calls that final function callback when everything is done executed. So
Done is part of the series? Done is a function?
Done is just the name I call it. You could call it finished. It's just whatever you pass in there, and then I like to use done just because it's short and it makes sense. I'm done with whatever it is I'm doing in here. So let's actually let's take that first example before, and let's actually apply it using ASYNC.SERIES. So what we're going to do here is it's going to actually look like this. Now, I know what you're thinking off the bat. You're like, this is better. This really, it's like more code. It's more confusing. But I'm also going to fix that. But I also want to explain why I had to write it this way. So browser visit is a method from Zombie.js, but it returns a promise timestamp, a promise signature that does not match the signatures expected by ASYNC.SERIES. ASYNC.SERIES expects a signature to look like function done, and browser fill returns a different type of promise. They're not compatible. So to make them compatible, I actually have to do function done and then pass that done function to the browser visit. You see, it's a lot of repetitiveness here. And this is another reason why I love JavaScript, is whenever you see anything repetitive like this, JavaScript is so moldable, you can do whatever you want to it. So what I actually did is I created a wrapper function. I like to call this wrapper function Go. It's short, it makes sense, but if you actually look at what this is doing, it's somewhat clever. What I'm doing is I'm getting all the arguments that are passed into this Go function. I'm getting the method, which is the first argument, and then I'm returning that signature that it expects. And inside here, I'm actually pushing that callback onto the args, and then I'm calling browser method apply browser args, which actually calls the method, and it applies those arguments. And by doing this, this is what it actually looks like now. Now we're talking. OK, so ASYNC.SERIES, go visit Drupal search, go fill edit keys, go press button, edit submit. This is starting to look like something anybody could use at this point, which is that's what I was starting to get really excited about using ASYNC.SERIES, is because we can make it look really good and make it very easy to use. So, and that actually works if you guys want to run that. So let's actually remember this nightmare, this visit and go iterate through each nodes. And so let's actually rewrite that using async. So this, if you go to the examples, some of you showed up late. I do want to mention that the examples, in fact, you can follow along with this presentation. If you go to github.com, Travis T, and I think it's Drupal Zombie, this entire presentation, including examples, is included in the source code. And you can also go, if you want to follow along online, you can go to travistidwell.com, Drupal Zombie, and you can actually follow along with this presentation. So anyway, the example is views list. So in here, we're going to do another series. We're going to go visit Drupal.org forum. We are going to pass another callback function, because what we're going to do here is we're going to get the list of nodes and we're going to iterate over each one of them. And to do that, we have to use another async method. So here we are getting the nodes. And this new method is called ASYNC.SERIES. So this is what we use instead of the each, but what's cool about this is it does it using asynchronous process flow. So what you do is you pass in the series you want to iterate over, and it provides a callback function, which is the node that it's currently on, and then a callback function for you to call when you're done processing that one item. So we're going to get the link, we're going to fire click, we're going to console log, text h1, and then we're going to say, OK, we're done processing that, and now we're done with this. So I know that it's more code, but the point I want to make here is in order to get that code above to work, we would have had to write 100 lines of code if we weren't using the async library. We've turned that code up there, which flat out doesn't work, to something like this, which actually does work if you want to do something similar, if you want to iterate over something. So let me just talk a little bit about some of the methods. Yeah?
I guess I don't get the name of ASYNC.JS because you're using it to do synchronous evaluation. With the done function, is that not some synchronous behavior?
This right here? So, OK, so ASYNC.JS, what it does is it attempts to take asynchronous programming, like that whole callback hell, and turn it into a very synchronous looking process flow. Is really what the purpose of the library is. So maybe it is a misnomer for async.js. But its whole objective is for you to be able to manage this whole asynchronous programming in a very readable, synchronous way. I hope that, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
OK. So let's actually just talk about some methods we want to care about here, because to understand the methods that you most likely will use, ASYNC.SERIES I use all the time. This is basically saying, I want to run an array of functions in series. It also has async each. No, async. There is also, you can run things in parallel too. Like async is awesome. Like you can run functions in parallel, and then it calls this main function whenever all of them are done. And there's this function async each series, which is an iterator is applied to each item in the array in series. So it's like each, but it's each series. There is an async each method, but that basically deploys all of them at once, and then it comes back at the very end, and that doesn't work for our use case of clicking on the page because it's going to deploy all of them. It's going to end up doing the same thing that we were doing before, and it just doesn't work. Another one that I really like is called whilst, which is like a while loop, but it's an asynchronously done while function. I will use this later, so you'll get to see it. Okay, so now that we have talked about Zombie.js, async, process flow, how does this apply to Drupal? We're all here at DrupalCamp. I want to know how this applies. And this is the feeding part. We're gonna actually start feeding on another system. So Drupal and Zombie.js. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about what are the benefits of combining these two. Well, the first thing is Drupal has this as standard menu system. So we can actually reuse a lot of the things we build here. And I'm going to show you that code reuse, like a login method. We can do a lot of really cool stuff simply because every Drupal website has a common menu system, unless they've altered it in some way using hook menu alter, which might as well be hook kill kittens. So another thing is we don't need admin of the site server to automate. I've already mentioned that. You don't have to be an admin to do it, so that's awesome. We can also use command line arguments and prompts. This is what really excites me about using Node with this, and I'll demonstrate all of this in this presentation if I have time. So let's actually do a simple use case, which is just logging into Drupal. So we're going to use ASYNC.SERIES using that go method that I just created. It's simple. I'm going to go visit user. I'm going to go fill edit name with a username. I'm going to go fill edit pass with a password. You guys are already cringing. We'll fix that. And then we're going to say press button, edit, submit. You're done. That's logging in. And it's done synchronously, and it looks good, and it's pretty easy to use. And then we provide this callback function whenever we're done saying, hey, yeah, we're logged in. I know what you're thinking. Oh, man. OK. So obviously, we'll fix the password right now. But let's say, you know what? I don't want to have to write this code every single time I log in. I'd like to reuse that in some way by making this login method, copying that, which takes a user pass and a callback called done. I mean, we can call it whatever we want, but I'm going to call it done. And then we populate that with the user pass and done. And so that way, we can use ASYNC.SERIES. And what I love about that go method, it's so flexible, you can use it for anything. So now we could just say, hey, go log in with this username and password. And it'll call that. And then when it's done, we say logged in as admin. Now that's more like it. So we have this method. It's called login. And then the actual code that you have to write is down here. It's very, very simple to use. Now let's talk about another use case, which is I don't want to have to put this in my scripts. The username and the password, I want to have some form of configuration file. So this is where we start getting into these other Node.js libraries where you can start leveraging them, which is one of them is called inconf, which is from the Flatiron framework, if any of you guys have had a chance to use it. But it's a really powerful library, which I'm about to show. So to install it's real easy. Dependencies inconf, and then what we're going to do here is we're going to create this configuration file, which is just a JSON file, and we're going to put all the things we care about that would be considered configuration in that file, such as the host, the user, and the password. And then from there, what we actually have to do to our application is we first have to initiate it as config required inconf. And then we're going to do this little command here. Well, I'm going to explain what this command does. But what we're doing is we are going to accept argument variables, which you can actually pass them whenever you actually launch the application, you can pass them as argument variables. We're going to accept environment variables, so you can actually define environment variables that may override those. Or we are going to load those configurations through this file. It's very flexible. And also, the order of importance is the order that you put them in there. So what we're saying is that the file overrides everything, which may be actually backwards. You guys may want. Actually, it may be this way. It may be the file. It looks first, then it looks at environment variables, then it looks at the arguments. I think that's actually the way it goes. So then what we have to do is using our go and login functions, which we've already written. It looks like that. User config user get config pass, and then it's really simple. So now you're saying, okay, what about that password? I do not want to commit that password to my repo. In fact, I never want to commit that. You should never want that. So we're going to fix this using another reason why I love using Node.js and Zombie is because we can bring in another Node.js package called prompt. And prompt, what it does is it offers the ability to prompt you. So whenever you run the app, it's going to say, give me your password. And so we're going to load that, install it, very easy. To use it, we say require prompt, prompt start. Now what we're going to do is the very first thing in the series, we're going to get the password, which is hidden. We don't want them to see it in the console. You're going to see I'm going to be running these things. And then we are going to set that in the configuration of whatever it is that they provided. And now we're done with that iteration. Now you see how this asynchronous stuff gets confusing. It's going to go to the next one and log in with whatever we provided as our password. Very exciting. So now I know what another thing that you're probably thinking is like, man, all these things should just be in like this really simple to use library. Like you're providing this prompt, this configs, this common functions that I may be using. So that's what I did. I actually created a library called DrupalGo.js. You can go to it at DrupalGo.js. And what I've really done is done all this for you. Made it real easy for you to integrate with Drupal. In fact, I provided these common methods that you'll use. Create content, log in, all of these things. It's also in the npm. So if you want to install it, say npm install DrupalGo, and you're good to go. So let's actually build an application that uses this. So the first one is the package.json file. I'm going to say, just call it whatever you want. My dependencies is DrupalGo. That's it. And then I'm also going to use async. You still need to use NVM, the version manager 0.8. Make sure you do that, or things are going to not happen the way you want them to happen. And then you type npm install. The config is already done for you. You just have to create a config file, a JSON file, and in it's going to be the host name of whatever it is you want to point to, and then maybe the username. But you can define your own configs. I'll show you how to use it. So let's build an application with DrupalGo.js. So the first thing we're going to do is require DrupalGo as Drupal and require async. So let's actually log in. So the first thing we're going to do is load the configuration. So just say Drupal load config JSON, and all that prompt or that incomp command I just do for you in the library. So that's easy. And now I'm just going to say Drupal go log in, and we're done. That's it. That is you logging into Drupal, and it'll read the username from the configuration. It will prompt you for the password. So let's actually look at the API in Drupal Go. So obviously there's the Drupal Go, which is that Go wrapper that I showed you guys earlier. Log in. So you can say user pass done, log into Drupal. There's get, which actually will get a configuration from the incomp, so get a parameter. Set will set a configuration parameter. Create content. I'm going to show all this off to you guys, how this all uses. So I can create a piece of content. Create multiple content. This is cool. You can actually pass in a list of nodes in your configuration. It'll just crank through them and create them. Each view item. I love this one. So each view item, basically you provide the context of the view, which is the selector, the sizzle selector. You provide a sizzle selector for what you consider an item in the view, and a callback function on what you want to call for every single item. What this does is it iterates over every item in the view, including pagination. So it'll go through every item, hits a paginator, it'll go to the next page. So all you have to do is implement this once, and it will go through every item in the view as long as that view has pagination. Pretty cool. So let's do some examples. The first one is I want to create some content. So I'm going to load an example. You can actually look at these examples in my repo. I will run them for you just to show you. So I'm going to go log in. I'm going to go get the title. What this is actually doing is this is going to prompt me for a title, which is another reason why it's great to use this library, because you can have it prompt you where you can make decisions as it's automating. And then what I'm going to do is call the create content method, and I am going to I'm going to create an article with the title that I provided. Does anybody know why I had to do this return function callback and return this structure here? The reason why I had to do this is because I could have just had this bracket right here. The problem is Drupal config get title. I haven't provided it yet by the time that that gets executed. So whenever this Drupal Go is getting added to the series, it adds everything to the series, and then it processes them. And at that point, this get title is nothing because it hasn't asked me for it yet. It ends up being null, and that's why I had to do it that way. So let's actually run this. So here we go. Clear. Node example 1. So here it just logged in. It's asking me for my password. I'm going to provide my password. And you'll see it says, OK, what do you want to call the title? And it went visit, filled, amazing, and then there it is. And whenever I go and refresh my page, there it is. So it just went and created that piece of content on the fly using Node.js. Pretty cool. Yep, don't even need services. It's all UI. Yep, exactly right. Let's actually create content on the fly. So let's create multiple nodes here. So for this, I'm just going to require Drupal Go like I would. I'm going to load the configuration. I'm going to log in. I'm going to use the async whilst here. What I want to do, my objective here, is I want to keep asking for titles until they just don't provide a title. And then I want to fall out. So that's why I'm using the whilst. It's like while they keep giving me a title, I'm just going to create content, which is the actual first callback in the whilst function. It's a callback that is the condition. Here I actually am returning the condition. And my condition is I want to while I get the title and they actually provide something. If they provide an empty string, that will return false, and the whilst function will kick out. The second callback is what I want to do for every iteration, and it also passes in this node done parameter. I can call that whatever I want. I mean, I can call it done even if I wanted to. But it passes in a callback that I'm supposed to call when it's finished. Here I'm going to do an async series. I'm going to set the title, which is just sets it in the configuration. And then I'm going to go, OK, so I have to set the title to nothing, because if I iterate it over the second time, that title will already be set, and it'll return me the value that I had previously. So the very first thing I'm saying, clear out the title. It's basically like saying title equals empty string. Then I'm going to get the title, which is going to ask me for it. I'm going to go create content, and here I'm going to return it. Let's run this. It's to reset the value of the configuration, because I'm iterating over, and for every iteration, I'm prompting the user for a title. And so on the second iteration, if I said Drupal get title, it will return me without prompting the user because that value is already set. It basically is like, oh, it's already set. Here you go. And so what I had to do is I had to clear it out as the very first thing, so whenever the next Drupal get title would come around, it would say, oh, it's nothing. I need to ask for it. Yes. So let's run this. Let's see what it does. Node example 2. So here I'm logging in. Zombies. So it's going to just keep. It's going to keep asking. I just misspelled that. I don't really care. And then I'm going to hit enter to not provide anything, and it kicks it out. And what that actually did is I just created 3 nodes really quickly. Instead of me having to go node create, walking through it, I just did it really fast. It's very fun. OK, let's do another one. Automate it. Let's actually say I don't want it to prompt me. I just want to put all that in the configuration. Well, you can. There is a nodes parameter where I can just provide objects of type, title, body, type, title, body, and just provide it in your configuration. Then the actual application in this piece is super simple. It's that. That's what the create multiple content is for. You just pass in that nodes object, and it'll just do it. Let's do it. Huh? It's just cranking over them, just like there it did. It just went all through all 3 of them. It just did all 3 of them. You notice it added bodies as well. So let me do something that I've given this presentation before. One thing I didn't do last time was talk about fields, node fields. So let's actually figure out what if I have like selects and other stuff. I just added this. You can add that in your configuration, and basically what it looks like is it's a key value pair. The key is the sizzle selector of what you want to where you want to target, and the object. It takes an action, which is what do you want to do? You want to select, you want to check, and then there's a value. now that you want to have that action, what do I want to add? So if I want to say I want to, the shirt size, I want it to be medium. Here I want the color to be orange. Choose, check. These are check boxes. English, and then I just keep doing that. So let's actually. I just have to log in here. So here you'll see it's actually choosing those items, checking, filling, going through, and here I'm doing another node, submit. And you'll see this actually did all my fields for me. Yeah, so it's very flexible. You can provide those. Now let's actually do like a real life example. The reason why I wanted this was because I wanted to easily maintain my issue queue in Drupal.org. So let's actually. So
you're not really answering your issue?
No, it's the Travis bot. Yeah, isn't that awesome? Yeah, right. Yeah, he's not quite yet, but he will. That's why he automatically accepted your proposal, that you just entered. He wants me to relicense a library, and it was like, okay. All right, so let me just walk you through this example real quick. So we're going to get the browser. Okay, so you can actually, the load will return the Zombie browser if you still need to do something using the Zombie API. That's a good illustration there. So here I'm going to go log in. I'm going to go visit my issue queue at MediaFront. Inside there, I'm actually going to use the each view item, which each view item, the issue is a view. So I'm going to get each view item, and I can actually scroll through this and show you just kind of what it looks like. So this is the sizzle selector for the actual view. This is the sizzle selector for each item that I want to iterate over in each view. And then it says, does a callback function. So inside here, I'm going to get the version. Right here, I'm using XPath. You notice I'm using the browser XPath here, so you can use XPath. And just for demonstration purposes, I'm not actually going to alter anything. This is just to illustrate that I could like close out every issue if I really wanted to. Let's actually run this, and I'll show this to you. And this is going to Drupal.org. So it's going to log. It takes a little bit of time because it's actually going to the web. So here it is. It's logging me in. Now it's going to my issue queue, and this will be depressing. How many issues the module has. But what's cool here is this is actually, you see it's paginating for me. It's walking through the pages of everything. And so the point here is I can do whatever I want at this point. I could say, if it's a 6x, 1x dev, I don't support that anymore, so I'm going to close that and say, hey, that's not supported. Sorry.
Well, you can do that to all of them.
Huh? Yeah, I guess I could, right? No, I'm still supporting it. I am. It's just, I'm busy with other things, like geeking out about this stuff. That is the truth. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about extending. I also wanted to make it really easy for you to provide your own method. So if there wasn't a method that you didn't want, you can extend it. So a great one is let's do an edit node. And it's just as easy. Like you just say Drupal edit node equals function, nid, title, and then you just do the stuff that you need to do inside of it. And now to use it, log in. Here I'm creating multiple content. And if I want to edit that node, I just do that. Drupal go. Now I can use it. Which kind of brings me to my next point, which is this is open source. So if you guys think of some methods that you find helpful, fork it. Do a pull request. If it looks good, I'll probably take it. Which in that way it'll benefit everyone. If you create an edit node method and you say, I think other people might want this, so you just fork it, do that, and I'll submit. Yeah.
Do you automate your GitHub pull requests?
You guys just think I'm the worst maintainer ever, right? Yeah, everything is automated, everything's accepted. Whatever. Where's what? Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh yeah. That? Oh, that's how you use it. The very bottom is how I would use this new method I extended and created. This is the one that's already provided in Drupal.js. So I'm creating this. I'm basically creating all the multiple content, and here I am using this edit node one that I just created. So you can still use all the other methods provided in Drupal Go. It's a thing I'm doing to create. I'm creating content now. I want to go back and edit it. I can. Okay, I just have like a really short section over testing. This will take me like 1 minute because, like I said, this can be used for testing, although I feel like it's more of an automation tool because I think there's better options for testing, to be honest with you. To test, you can just pull in the Node.js assert library, and you can say assert OK. I mean, it's really like that. I mean, and then this will actually pull out in the console, and it'll say if anything is what you don't expect it. So you can use it for testing, of course, but I think you'll have more fun using it for automation, like what I was just demoing. And that's it. Thank you. Here's everything that I have. Like you can go to my website. I do have a blog already about this. My presentation, the source presentation video. I did this in Drupal Dallas. If you guys want to go and watch it, you can go there. There's everything you need. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.